You're listening to the Recovered Life Show.
And I love this topic. I love the room that you do, Damon, on Thursdays at 9 a.m. Pacific. It's in Clubhouse. So if you haven't joined Clubhouse, make sure you do and follow the Recovered Life, because we have 4 rooms that we do every week, Monday through Thursday. And I love what you put together, because it really helps to be able to talk about this stuff, you know, and where you can go if you are stuck, because you and I both know that putting down the substance and changing these behaviors is hard, and it needs to be maintained and supplemented for your life. You know, I've been around 25 years. I know you're a little bit older than me. Had to say it.
Little bit, just a little bit.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. Throwing some punches back. And so it's really important to know that you still need the support.
Yes.
We have really, really good subjects, but one of my favorites,
I would say, Kristina, you know, one of the reasons why I did Unstuck, and it's on Clubhouse, 9 a.m. Pacific time on Thursdays. The reason I did Unstuck wasn't actually for the newcomers. A lot of newcomers come in, a lot of people in early recovery come in, but it was actually for people who had decades of sobriety.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And the reason why I did it is because, you know, I think it's harder the longer that you are sober, in my opinion.
It is.
You know,
there's a whole bunch of. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm interrupting.
No, I was going to say because I think that people that have long-term recovery feel that, and let's just call long-term recovery. You know, some people say it's 5 years, some people say it's 10 years, but I'm really talking like after 10, 20, 30 years, right? And these are some of the people that we, Kristina, you and I talk with on a daily basis, right?
Correct.
So it's harder, I think, because they don't want to come out. You don't want to come out and say, hey, you know what? I'm feeling 100% stuck in my job, in this relationship, in this whatever. You just don't, because one, you don't want to turn off newer people.
Exactly.
If you're working with newer people, you don't want to do that, right?
That's true.
And the thing is you're saying, man, I'm the only one that's feeling that maybe I need more than just this Thursday night meeting.
Yes, very dangerous.
Maybe, hey, to be honest, hey, things aren't working. Like I've had people, you know, we talk about this. I've got this group, Old School. Shout out to everybody who's in Old School. And to get into Old School, you have to have 5 years, but really the average, I think it's 15 years.
Wow.
Is the average sobriety. So there's people with 30. There's people. I think we have one person that is like 5 years or something.
Okay.
2 people.
Lucky guy or girl.
This is what we talk about. It's all guys. It's all dudes, right? Stagnating. And this is what we talk about. We talk about areas in our recovery that we're stuck and how to get out of them. And there's a lot of freedom there when you start talking about strategies about how to get unstuck.
There is. And I totally agree with you. After you've been around a little while, you do feel the pressure of always, you know, having a storyline that talks about sobriety as being a good thing. And sobriety is always a good thing. I don't want to be misconstrued or sound confused, but yes, things show up in our lives. 5 years ago, I had a big level of awakening, and there was a lot of grief. And because I was in my home group, which I've been attending 23 years, I knew I could say it, but I sometimes wouldn't want to say it if there was a brand new person, because I don't want them to think, well, why the heck would I keep coming to this group if, you know, she's been here the longest and she's miserable. So I'm very lucky. I have 2 to 3 people, and now your Thursday room to talk about these kinds of things. There's no shame in having struggles. In fact, you know, I got sober at 27. Of course, there have been huge life changes since then. You know, divorce, a high support needs child. I've had to be able to talk about things. And with Recovered Life, we now have a whole new platform, and specifically in your Thursday room. I love the topics that you pick.
Well, you know, it's interesting being part of a big, you know, and I know I'm going to get comments here I'm going to get some comments in the
Please.
thing, but being part of a big 12-step group in the Valley here in Southern California. And, you know, it was a very old group and it had been around for a long period of time, and being in a position where I don't want to say management, but kind of like helping run and organize and make sure that it pulls off. Like, look, if anybody's listening to this and you're new, you know, and if you're going to some of these meetings where there's these groups have, 10, 12 meetings a week, and they're at different venues and stuff. Look, that, there's bank accounts, there's there's people on the committee, there's people talking about insurance, there's people talking about, the topics, there's people talking about the culture of it. It takes a large amount of people to pull that off. But what I found is that I might be stuck in an area of my life, but the last thing I wanted to do, in a way, the home group was great for me because it gave me the structure, but at the same time, it kept me stuck in certain ways because I was embarrassed to talk about it. Like, I didn't want to talk about, like, hey, you know what? Like, where people maybe get stuck is money, or they get, so it's like, wow, I'm sober, but like, hey, my money's going really up and down, or my personal relationships aren't great. Right. But I don't really have the skills to be able to handle certain things that are happening in my family or in my life. And, to have the discussion I found through the Unstuck room and having these conversations, live, either with Old School or through Unstuck on Clubhouse, is that not only was the only one that was not feeling, I was feeling this, other people were feeling it.
Of course.
But the really great thing about this is that I found a secret to getting unstuck. And
which is,
well, I think it's the identification of actually what's actually true and what's not true. Right.
So
like,
true.
So the thing is that through 12 step and through therapy and everything, our heads get very, very full. Right. We have coaches, we've got all this other kind of stuff. And one of the things I like about coaching, and why, coaching works so well to get unstuck in recovery, is because a good coach is going to narrow right down in really quickly.
Yes.
I know, like, when I've coached people that in 12 steps, especially business people, which is my thing. I do a lot of, I do guys, like,
yes, you do.
That's my thing for the most part. Guys
Your
coming to me.
Specialty. Yes.
Not dancing for 8 weeks to try to find out what's wrong. Boom, narrowing it right down.
Correct.
Hey, look, you're afraid of people. Or, hey, look, you're not consistent.
Right.
With what you do. Right. Like, just really getting narrow on actually labeling it on what's going on.
Well, and in traditional 12-step groups, sometimes you could be met with, that's an outside issue. But I really believe that it is vital to my recovery to be able and to go and be transparent about what's happening in my life, to have that feedback. And most of our drinking is a result of our belief systems. It's not in a bubble, right? It's not in an incubator where I just have a problem with alcohol or I have a problem with, drugs. It is our whole life that needs to be discussed, and we need to be able to go to places and talk about it. And for me, one of the big secrets that I think for middle-aged women is that there might be some dissatisfaction. They spent years, either raising children if they're mothers or working at a certain career, and they get to that later in life, not early 20s or 30s. And they don't want to say that they're dissatisfied. They don't want to say that they need to have more. And so bringing up these kind of topics and opening the door to it allows for us to explore it safely, to not be on an island by ourselves, and allows us to hear somebody else say, me too. I'm not 100% satisfied with just being a mother.
Well, look, having worked with a lot of young guys, and I'm going to say, like, I got sober in my 20s, so I understand what that's like, right? Like, so, and, now in my 50s, having long-term recovery gives you some perspective, but it doesn't necessarily help with granular issues. Sometimes it makes the granular issues, because a lot of times, I think this is the disservice, is that a lot of times we go into these groups, right, our therapy, and they go, well, you're sober by the grace of God. And all of that's true. I believe all that's true. But it's just like, well, you shouldn't complain. You shouldn't really want more. Like, you're just lucky you're here. And, like a flower in the wind,
Right.
And I'm like, well,
Somebody's
what? I don't know if that's necessarily true. Right. Like, so the thing about just being able to really narrow in and identify what is going on, like, what the hell's going on? Like, like in the 20s, a lot of times with guys in the 20s, I find that they have a really hard problem with employment being self-contributing, right? Like, just being able to sustain themselves.
Yes.
And especially in the culture now where a lot of people stay at home or have the option to stay at home, right?
Right.
They're lost in the wind. And, the thing is I understand that, like in the early 20s, because someone's just getting sober is so difficult. And now you're going to be thrown into the workforce, or
True.
you have to do something, right? Like to
Right.
sustain yourself. And it's super stressful for a lot of these guys. So it's just like, just identifying what's wrong. Like,
Specifically.
hey man, you're not consistent. Like, so here's some tools about how to get consistent. I think AA is maybe even good at getting you to the precipice to be able to be neutral, right? 12-step
Right.
groups, ACO, any of those, like neutral, to be able to say like, oh, okay, I can identify it without having this emotional breakdown.
Correct.
Because if you're not neutral about it, you can't ever get to
The
the
grief.
solution.
And then the solution. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And most of our lives are all about denial, denial, denial.
Yeah.
We pick up something that will allow us to remain in denial. And then we have to put that down because it's no longer the solution. Alcohol was a solution for me. And then it bit back. And I recognized, oh my gosh, I can't keep doing this and live, not to be dramatic, but I wouldn't have lived much longer at the rate I was drinking. But then guess what? All of these other things show up, like relationships, because I drank over relationships, like fear, and being able to share that openly, outside issue maybe, is, I think, key to being able to stay in recovery. And so I love that you continue to bring this type of content either here to the Recovered Life or on Clubhouse or all the other places that we're at, because I think that it is the key to keeping the sobriety that you have, but it's also important not just to stop at being sober. And I didn't get sober to be miserable.
Yeah, well, this is the whole thing. It's like, and this is why I think coaching, and I know with codependency and stuff, why your coaching is so valuable, Kristina, and coaching in general is valuable, is if you could find somebody that you can trust, that
Yes.
you can lean in enough and maybe take the advice. Because that's the other thing. It's like a lot of people in recovery are very touchy. They don't want to rock the boat.
True.
With what they're thinking, right? They don't really want to know the truth, right? Like, so, and if you're willing to be able to kind of get out, if you're able to use the neutrality that 12 steps gave you in order to start to kind of apply this, why coaching's so good, or therapy, is it's a time compression play.
It is.
If you're inconsistent and you don't show up, instead of going 5 years in a career and getting fired every 6 months,
right,
or not being able to, or bouncing because you, quote, have a problem with somebody that you work with, and it's the same problem that you've had the last 8 jobs, right?
And maybe you.
Maybe it's you, right? Like, so it's like, or maybe you're attracting people that are like this. So it's like this whole time compression play. I'm down. It works for business. It works for everything else.
Yes.
Why don't we use that in recovery?
I think that's such a good insight to say, because when I start to work with people, we have steps in so many areas of our life, right? We just did, the first segment on exercise. We have a pretty good idea at some point in your sobriety that you take these first steps, and these are the actions that you take. But when it comes to, exploring some of these bigger areas, we can make them a mountain. We can make them huge in our head. We've been running from this forever. And when you find somebody, you say, what, enough is enough. I'm going to invest in me. And you get that pointed, targeted system, that action plan. It can shave years off of something that you might have to do. You were saying, blowing in the wind. Well, This is a way to stop being blown around. This is a way to say enough's enough. I'm going to put down roots and I'm going to figure out what I've been running from. And coaching is a great way to do it. Peer support groups help, but it's not nearly as targeted. And everybody should take that time to really, really invest in themselves, because that's what you're doing. You're investing in yourself, and you are not only running away from pain, but you're running to pleasure. And the way that you can do that is by working on the here and now. If you need things to grieve, you work a little bit of that, but the here and now, you have your plan. I was talking about, I always put my tennis shoes on, even if I'm only going to go 5 minutes, because that's the action step.
Well, that's it. And,
and
the thing is that I think that where people get stuck the most in regard, by doing this room, it's been interesting because it's a group, there might be 20 to 30 people that are there. You got, more actually, right? You maybe have 50, 60, 100 that are coming in. throughout the time, but there's a group of people on stage talking about areas that they were stuck. And, last week we did this whole thing about self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
And, one of the things is the labeling of self-esteem is that people have self-esteem hits. And, one of the things that we identified is that the reason that people get stuck is a couple different reasons. One, they think they're stuck, but they're not
Mm-hmm.
stuck at all. They're
Mm-hmm.
just unable to see everything else that's happening in their life. And
Right.
things are really moving. Things
Yes.
are really going. And, and I notice that with my own life too, is that I'll have the feeling of stuck. But in reality, when I put pen to paper or when I talk to somebody like you and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, what about this? What about the, hey, you're doing the work. Things
Right.
are happening. You just all of a sudden woke up one day and had an expectation that you feel is not being met. And now you've decided that you're stuck. But that's not true at all.
Yes. And there's something to be said about maturing in your spiritual life as well. And being around other people that are also willing to be transparent, also willing to share, also willing to walk through some of the hard stuff or talk about that taboo, area that we don't want to talk about. It will allow, for me, this is the way it's always worked. Somebody will share something and I will be in my head thinking, well, that was useless. I mean, I'll be honest, like that's not going to help me. And sure enough, within 6 months, something's going to show up in my life, but I have the action plan. I have the blueprint on she felt this way 6 months ago. Look at her now. And you're right. We don't know how fast we're moving. We are so hooked on dopamine, that we're dopamine junkies. That's what, you learn. And we're so hooked on dopamine that we don't spend any time cultivating the other 3 chemicals that help us enjoy life. And when you're sitting in something, you think you're sitting in it, but you're probably doing what you need to do, or you're going to know how to do what you need to do so that you aren't just relying on dopamine. Complacency is because we want that hit, right? We want that instant gratification. But when you have gotten to a point in your sobriety and your recovery where behaving like this is going to hurt me, behaving like this, you're really stuck emotionally. You need somebody to remind you.
Oh, absolutely.
You've
And you know
gone
what?
this
A
far.
lot of the times, I'm going to tell you really the honest truth about it is that people that are in recovery get addicted to drama. And then sometimes what happens is as they work the steps and go through and they start repairing their lives, right? When we start repairing our lives, there's no more drama. The drama reduces and then boredom sets in. A lot of people in recovery do not know how to live without the drama.
Exactly.
So with that, they feel like, well, things aren't working because there's no drama, right? And that's not true at all. Things are actually working really well. You're moving further away from that, but you're not experiencing that drama.
Right.
And I think that I think that that's such a huge lesson. I mean, this has been a great segment. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This has been really fun.
Make sure to tell them again how to find the room on Thursdays, because I think
I'm going to actually
amazing.
tell everybody. Yeah, I'll tell you Thursdays. All you have to do is go to Clubhouse. And guys, I want to just set this up. It's not just my room. I've got 2 rooms. Kristina has 2 rooms.
Yes.
On Clubhouse. We're on Clubhouse. I would say 4 days a week now.
4
We're on
days
there
a week.
4 to 5 minimum hours a week. We're on Clubhouse, as well as going live with you here 3 days a week. Plus, we're going to add an Instagram show. Everybody's been asking for an Instagram live, so we're going to stay tuned for that. We're going to add that.
That's cool.
So all you have to do is go to Clubhouse and put in The Recovered Life, and you're going to see our room come up. All you have to do is just hit that green Monopoly button, and then you're going to get notified every time that we have a room on Clubhouse.
A live room.
Mine is on Thursday at 9 a.m. We also record them too, right? So people can listen to them later. Tell them a little bit about, I've got the Monday room where we talk about This Week in Recovered Life, where we set up our recovery plan.
Correct.
That's a great room. Monday at 9. And then tell them about what's going on
Tuesday. Tuesday, we have Rewire Your Brain. So it's all about recovery through a neuro lens. And we have a lot of guest speakers. Right now, we're walking through Brene Brown's book, Atlas of the Heart, and doing it as kind of a group book club. People come, they share. I have experts that come in and share from their standpoint things like imposter syndrome, boundaries, which is the Wednesday room. But there'll be people who come in on Tuesday. We talk about mindset. We talk about the repair. We learn things like you're chasing dopamine. This is what you need to do to increase serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphins. And Wednesday, we go through the codependent lens, which I think is incredibly powerful. The name of the room is Setting Healthy Boundaries, because that is why I drank, because I didn't know how to set healthy boundaries. And it's so important for everybody, even if you do not consider yourself a codependent. Generally, I've said it before, I've met codependents who aren't alcoholics, but I've never met an alcoholic who doesn't have codependency tendencies.
Absolutely.
Ever.
And you know what? I will tell people, just because Kristina will tell you, that is one of the top recovery rooms.
It's a great room.
In Clubhouse is your Wednesday room, the Setting Healthy Boundaries, because I've learned more through that room. It's so great. And the Tuesday one yesterday was crazy.
It was really good.
We'll go over this on TGIF Sober on Friday, the next episode that we do live. We'll go over TGIF Friday. We'll actually TGIF Sober. We'll talk about what actually happened in that Tuesday room. But you know what? It reminded me of actually early recovery, the energy of that room.
Yes.
And the breakthroughs that were happening one after another. And, and it blows my mind, because I see a lot of stuff in recovery out there. This is 100% free, totally free.
Yes.
And people are having major breakthroughs.
It is. There's a lot of protein, right? We like that one show together. There's a lot of protein on Tuesday, and Wednesday is so beautiful. The human experience, knowing we're not alone, identifying things that we're doing in our life that are really, really slowing our margins down or shrinking our margins down. It is really, really, I think the reason why it's so popular is because people need this. I know I need this.
Yeah, absolutely. We need it. And you know what? If you're listening to this on a podcast, you're in a town that maybe doesn't have access live to all of these discussions, all you have to do is go to recoveredlife.us and you can join right there. It will say right in the middle there. There's a ton of resources. Click, hey, I want to join the members community totally for free. And you're going to just literally jump right into the discussion.
That's right.
And I'd like to thank everybody for that has joined. We've had a huge amount of membership of people that have come in over the last week here that have joined because they've listened to the show either live or on a replay. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.